Hello and welcome to another episode of Pep Talks with Jeanne. I'm your host, Jeanne Pepper. I started doing Pep Talks as a way to inspire you to do intentional acts of kindness and to further the goals of #BlazeItForward. Over the past 6 years, Pep Talks has evolved, and I now use it for interviewing people who are trying to make this world a better place through their volunteerism, community service, and careers. My guests are all here because they have dedicated their lives to making this world a better place. Today, I'm happy to have Rick Matros, who is a great friend of mine, has been for many years, and he's also a great role model of philanthropy for me and for everybody in our community here in Orange County. He does so much and has done so much over the years. He's been honored by several local charity foundations here in Orange County over the years. I know I've attended in his honor. He was honored by the Jewish Community Center of Orange County. He was honored by Jewish Federation. The Solomon Society gave him Mensch of the Year. He has been honored by the Samueli Academy, which is a local private charter school. Well, not private, but a charter school. He was also recently honored with his wife, Adrienne, by the Cystic Fibrosis Organization. And he has visited Israel numerous times to both help people there and to now, of course, with everything going on, he's been there. And over the years, you've gone many, many times over the years and done community service work there. You are on 3 boards right now. You're on the board of Artists for Israel, IsraAid US, and Girls Inc. So it's not all Jewish. And I know that you're involved with Radiant Healthcare, which is not a Jewish organization. So you are really spread out in the things that you do. Your wife, Adrienne, was honored as the 2019 Philanthropist of the Year. And of course, she could not do that without your help. I'm sure you are a big piece of that. And I'm just going to dive right into it. Rick, tell us about yourself.
So in terms of the Jewish, non-Jewish thing, we have criteria. And the criteria isn't just Jewish based. So the criteria is we work with marginalized populations. We work with mental health is a theme through almost everything that we do. And then the Jewish community in Israel. So the mental health and marginalized population piece of it crosses a lot of things. And with IsraAid, after October 7th, it's actually the first time IsraAid ever deployed in Israel. We're in 16 countries. So working with countries that are affected by climate change, where there are refugee situations, we're in Muslim countries. Again, it's working with marginalized populations, countries that may or may not be third world. It depends on different circumstances, obviously. But that's really our core criteria.
Yeah, and that's actually the segment of the population that I am the most interested in serving as well. I'm very concerned about the mental health crisis internationally, particularly here, though, as well as marginalized communities like the LGBTQ community, Jewish communities can be marginalized, as we've seen.
Yes, correct. Right.
Yeah. Those are some places that are key interest to me also. So that's why we get along so well, probably.
Oh, one of the reasons.
I'm sure. Something that you're doing, you're also involved with Tilly's Life Center, which is,
yes.
I don't know I don't think you're on the board there, but I know that you are a big contributor and they are a fabulous organization.
Yeah, Adrienne's on the board. So we sort of divide and conquer a little bit.
Yeah.
So we work with each other in each other's organizations, but only one of us is either on the board or an advisor or
that's really all that's necessary.
Yeah.
When you're a family. So I know that you just got back from Israel, and I'm sure that people would love to hear about what you were doing there and what you saw there. But by the time this airs, it may not be current or relevant information anymore. I don't know. Maybe people will still be interested. Who knows? It'll be a couple of months from now. Yeah. But I really want to talk about with you Artists for Israel, and because you have a very interesting background with tattoo art. I think it's one of the most unique things about you personally even though you have done a lot of remarkable things in your life, including starting a publicly traded company. So we're going to get to IsraAid, but Artists for Israel. But I think we need to start with, how did we get to this place? Like, where did Rick start? How did your life start out?
So it's kind of a rough upbringing. My mom split when I was really small, and my dad wasn't exactly a good guy. So pretty rough kind of upbringing. Also grew up in a highly anti-Semitic environment, which we weren't religious, but that really formed my Jewish identity. So really for almost all of my upbringing, I was kind of on my own. Just trying to figure things out and doing things I shouldn't have done. And I was a bad kid. And
what is a bad kid, Rick?
Look,
you went to school?
I went to school. I cut out of school all the time. I stole stuff on a regular basis from stores, department stores, and
Rick, you really were a bad guy.
All that. This is kind of how bad I was with school. So a lot of us were against the Vietnam War at the time, and there was this national march that was going to happen, and we actually asked permission to not be at school that day, so I wanted to go to the Village in Manhattan and participate in the march, and we were told no, we couldn't do that. So I put cherry bombs in the school ventilation system and shut the school down. So and people knew that I did it, but no one snitched on me. So the school could never prove it. So I got to go to the march, and some of the other kids did as well. And yeah, so I got involved in illegal substances starting when I was like 15, and all that kind of stuff. So, you're just kind of on your own trying to figure things out, and, you make some mistakes and you're a kid, and, you learn from them over time. And then when it came time to go to college, it was an opportunity for me to get away and kind of start new again. So, so that was kind of
How did that happen? Did you have family that supported you so that you could go to college, or did you put
No,
yourself
I was able
through?
to get a full scholarship to college, and then I wasn't completely straightened out in college either because I needed a way to make money, and I got fired from my first two jobs for stealing food because I didn't have any money. But so then I did the next best thing, and I was the biggest drug dealer on campus, and it was a way to make money, right? So that's kind of what I did, and that helped me get through. And then I went to grad school at SC after that, and I got a full scholarship. So I was smart enough, to pass these tests and whatever and all that kind of thing. And so that got me to California and got me completely sort of broken away from my family, my roots, and all that kind of stuff. So, which
was a good thing.
Yeah. It was a good thing. Great. So that's kind of how all that happened. And really, probably by my junior year of college, I was like, get my act together, and thinking about building a future and all that kind of stuff. And then the clean break coming to California made that much kind of easier, because I got here and I didn't know anybody, right? No one knew me, so there was sort of no expectations and all that sort of stuff. I still actually have my high school yearbook, and it's kind of funny because, in yearbooks, people write things for you, right? And if you look at my high school yearbook, like everybody's comments were like, "Oh, we hope you'll be okay. We hope things get better in your life." It was all like all this kind of stuff. It's pretty funny when you go back and read that stuff. So, so that was kind of...
Wow. Did you go to your high school reunion?
So I never did until actually a couple of years ago, and Adrienne's like, "Oh, let's just go do that." So yeah, I went back and because I didn't maintain contact with anybody from high school other than one person, and she was egging me on to come back as well. So yeah, we went back, and it was a kind of a good experience, and I was actually one of only 3 people there that left. Everybody else, Long Island is very much everybody kind of stays in place. A lot of people live in the same houses their parents lived in, or the first house they bought is the house they stay in. They sometimes follow their parents' businesses. My sister's kind of done that habit. Been in the same place for decades and decades and decades, and there's a lot to be said for stability and predictability and all that kind of stuff. It just wasn't for me, but it was actually a really nice experience, and kind of fun to go back with maybe some level of success when everybody thought you were going to be either dead or in jail. So that was kind of fun. And there was one guy that was there who was the only guy in school that I ever kind of looked up to at all, because I was the second one in school that had long hair, and I was the second one in school that bought bell bottoms. He was the first, and we both loved music, and he wound up spending his life as a musician, which was really fantastic. So to see him after all these years was actually a pretty cool thing, because we used to hang out together and talk about, share albums and all that kind of stuff. So it was really cool kind of seeing him and see that he had this dream that he was able to live through his whole life, which was amazing, right?
That is amazing.
Yeah, so it was cool.
So what makes Rick tick?
I don't know, family, really. Like I always say that my family is the family I created, not the family I was born into. Adrienne's amazing. We have amazing kids and a load of grandkids. And, I think growing up the way I did, like career-wise, I was really never afraid to take risks. I was never afraid to fail because I had failed so much. I actually saw that there was always a learning experience, which I know sounds cliche, but it's true. And so, I think sort of having the balance between taking chances career-wise and business-wise, but having the stability of family on the side was kind of a good blend for me.
Mm-hmm. I know that you met Adrienne when you were working.
Yeah.
Was that before you started your company?
So I had been recruited to the company she was at, which was already a publicly held company. They recruited me as their president, and I was still married at the time, although the marriage was kind of unwinding. And I think my first or second week there, so it's a long-term care business. So we had nursing facilities in a lot of different states, and the first thing I did would be to go out and visit the facilities and visit the people that were running them and for us and all that. And that was really how I met Adrienne. She was running a special needs facility out towards the desert. I think we both kind of had a crush on each other, but she wouldn't go anywhere near me because I was still married. And then when that finally got resolved, everybody was egging me on. Well, you have to ask Adrienne out. You have to ask Adrienne out. I'm like, oh, it's too soon. I haven't been divorced that long, and all this kind of stuff. And so I asked her out for Valentine's Day, and that was kind of it. I was seeing somebody else at the time, and the next morning I broke up with her, and that was it.
The rest is history.
Right.
And now, how many years later has it been?
So we've been together like 35 years and married like 33 and a half or something. Yeah.
You got married around 1990, probably.
Yeah, we got married September 1990, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got married 2 years after you did.
Yeah. So
you ended up adopting 4 children with Adrienne.
Yeah, so we actually didn't go through the system. Mm-hmm. It's hard when people ask us to explain everything, so we'll use that word, but we actually didn't go through the system. We took them in. their aunt was working for Adrienne in a special needs facility, and so Adrienne was hearing about this really terrible situation they were in with parents that were in jail and drugs and all this kind of stuff. And eventually both parents wound up dying. But Adrienne and the girls were about the same age as our girls. So they were 4 girls, sisters, 6 to 10 years old, give or take. And Carly and Chelsea were kind of in that same age range. And, Adrienne came home and she'd been telling me about them and said, I think we should take them in. And I do what Adrienne tells me. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we took them in and, and it was pretty crowded. Alex was really small, so we had 7.
And you had 3 bedrooms, right?
Yeah, 7 in the house. It was pretty crazy. And, but they lived with us for quite a while. And then that same woman, their aunt, was the one responsible person kind of in their family. So we basically said to her, you can stop working. We'll support you if you can help with the girls. And so we got her a place not far from us for her and the girls. And then time passed. And when the oldest girl was getting married, we bought them a house. And then the other 3 sisters were then moved in with them. So so it's all kind of one big family, and
it's really quite remarkable too. You haven't mentioned this, but these girls were not the same religion; they weren't the same ethnicity.
Right, Mexican American Christian girls. We didn't want to impose our thing on them. We wanted to honor who they were. They had extended family. We just wanted to honor that and just make sure that they had a lot of support and love and a good environment to grow up in. And they all grew up to be amazing people. Their husbands are all fantastic. 6 of our grandchildren are their kids.
6 out of how many?
6 out of now 15, because we had one 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So, and there'll be one more after this, and then we'll be done. Well, they'll be done anyway. I think we'll be done too. So, they're great, and everybody does things together. We do 2 separate vacations because it's just too many people. It's not even a vacation, but we do things together all the time. All our kids really love each other, and it's just great. It's great, and it's great to see how they turned out.
So nice. Do the grandchildren all know each other, play together, and all that?
Yeah, particularly the older ones. Not so much the real little ones, but the older ones do. Yeah, okay. And because everybody goes to each other's birthday parties and that kind of stuff. So that's
fantastic. It's almost cross-cultural in a sense.
Yeah, and it's the best thing we've ever done.
Did you hear that, everybody? It's
the best thing we've ever done.
That Rick and Adrienne ever did was adopt 4 girls. Different religion, different ethnicity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That says a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what makes Rick tick, is helping people and seeing the results.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say that in a situation like that, very hands-on, very easy to quantifiable. And this is something that will have lasting results for you, your children, your grandchildren.
Yeah, and I think, it carries over professionally as well, because corporate culture is the most important thing to me, because it's, there aren't that many original ideas. Your competitors are your competitors. What really separates you, it's really your culture, the talents you can have, and retention and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of the same principles in terms of caring for people and supporting people and being transparent and understanding that no matter what you have, things can go south the next day. You never know what's going to happen. And so you always have to be humble. And I think that regardless of how much success you've had, and I know I've had a lot of colleagues I don't necessarily see that in when they, hit a certain level of success, but I think it's important that the people that work for you believe that you don't think you're any better than they are, because you're not. So you may have more resources and more opportunities for certain things, but we all have a lot of the same issues when it comes to family and things that people go through, and health issues, and all this stuff. So I remember when early on in my career, when I was a nursing home administrator, and I just got assigned this new facility, and the person who ran medical records for us, her name was Yolanda, came up to me, and I guess the woman that preceded me was kind of the queen of the facility. And Yolanda came up to me, and she introduced herself, and she said, "Look, I don't know anything about you, but you need to understand that in between the sheets, we're all the same." And, that's important, and it stayed with me. And she actually worked for me for another 10 years in different companies. She was great. So anyway, I think that's really important. People need to feel like they bring value every day to what they do. And if you feel like, there's a pecking order because of people's titles, whatever, then how they are going to feel like they bring that level of value. And so I think everything carries over. If that's kind of how you're at least trying to live your life, it carries over in your professional life, in your family life, and the philanthropy that you do. I think it's just a consistent kind of thing that ties everything together.
Yeah, it sounds like it's part of balance for you. Having balance in your life is having all of these things in your life.
Yeah, because you can't do anything about when you grow up with a certain level of trauma. You're always going to have some of that darkness with you. You just are. Yeah. I think. And everybody copes with it in different ways, whether they go through therapy, they don't go through therapy, whatever it is. But it's always going to be there. And I think at some point you just have to accept it and say, this is how I'm going to live my life, which helps you to cope with that. Right?
Yeah. And you really did take a very disadvantaged beginning and turn it around with your own hard work and initiative.
Yeah, no, I feel good about that. It's uncomfortable to talk about it a little bit, because you don't want to be like, oh, I did all this, whatever.
I don't think anybody knew about this. I didn't know.
But yeah, I feel really good about that. And, it always left me feeling like, I can do whatever I kind of set my mind to. And if it didn't work, at least I gave it a good shot. And
never give up.
Right. And that's fine.
Because you didn't have great success in your early years, right? It took time to get to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, once I started my career, I did have success
right away.
Pretty quickly. I moved along pretty quickly kind of in my career. But that was also partly because I would always look for opportunities that were kind of difficult, because I knew it was okay if I wasn't always successful, as long as I could learn from it. Mm-hmm. So I think that helped. I didn't just get a position and say, I'm happy in this position. I was always kind of looking for something else. So I think that probably has a lot to do with my upbringing, where you're never really completely satisfied. You're always trying to do something more.
There could be more. Kind
of thing. So, but again, I think learning how to roll with that and not seeing that as a negative.
Mm-hmm. It's really fascinating to me, Rick, because a lot of people that grow up in these kinds of traumatic situations where they don't have family support don't end up being able to pull their lives together. It's very unusual, I think, what you've done. And I don't know, what's your secret sauce? What makes you so much different than other people that have so much trauma?
Well, I think people repeat everything, right? My dad was however he was, but I know how he was treated by his dad, right? And so at some point, and I think you see this with lots of people, there's all these amazing stories from people that grew up in really tough environments and all that, and they learned how to break the chain. You've got to break the chain. You've got to be able to do that. And so I think, for me, when I was really young, it was the Beatles.
Who you met?
Well, that was late. A couple of them, but that was later on. But
A couple of them, just a couple.
That was later on. It was really I had met John later on, but no. But it was hearing that first single and seeing these 4 kids that just kind of changed everything, and that gave me it gave me hope. And so I'd be in my room every night and listen to music every night, and I became a comic book geek. So it's like I created this world that was outside of my world. So I would do my homework or not, but every night I would listen to music and read comics, and that was like my escape. And that's, I mean, to this day, I buy comics every week. So
You still do?
yeah. I'm a total comic book geek. Yeah. So so that stuff always stayed with me. But it was kind of looking outward and looking for other people that were rising above certain circumstances, and and how I tried to sort of carefully pick my heroes. So yeah, it was the Beatles, ultimately my heroes, but MLK and Malcolm X and Bobby Kennedy. So I consciously tried to look for people that I could look up to, that could be heroes to me, and I felt like, even though I was always told that I was never amount to anything, all this sort of stuff, all this emotional abuse that some parents put their kids through, and physical abuse, but I always felt like I had something that it didn't have to be like that for me. But as a little kid, you just can't break out of those circumstances. But I just felt like at some point, if I always had this innate belief, and then hung on to the people that sort of I looked at as heroes and wanted to emulate in sort of some form or fashion.
That's really interesting. I think people really appreciate what you've just revealed about yourself, because I think it's unusual. It's an unusual background. And when I see your tattoos, I don't think you had any when I first met you.
I did. They just weren't
visible.
They weren't visible. So, look, I've run publicly held companies since '91. So, which makes me a corporate Wall Street guy, which I don't fit in a lot of ways. But you couldn't show certain things, right? So, I mean, I had long hair and earrings, and that was already like, what is wrong with you? Like you didn't fit in, kind of thing.
You were a rebel, even for Wall Street.
But as my career progressed, then I was able to kind of relax in terms of expressing myself in the ways that I wanted to express myself, and not caring what people thought about it. And really, I think people accepted it over time. And I think, especially when you're working with Wall Street guys and investment bankers, I think some of them who sort of have to wear the uniforms every day and all that, kind of like, oh, I wish I could do some of that too, Yeah. Not necessarily to the same extent, but you know what I'm saying. So
no, they all want to be you, Rick.
Yeah. I remember there was actually this, I was at this banker dinner one night, and there was this young banker who had done some work with my company, and he pulled me aside and he said, can I show you something? So we went to this other room, and he takes off his suit jacket and his shirt, and he's like tatted all over the place. He goes, don't tell anybody.
No way.
So he worked for a major bank, right? So it's kind of funny, but yeah.
So there are some cool people in Wall Street.
There are some cool people in Wall Street. Yeah.
Very interesting. How did you get involved with all of these tattoos, and do you think that it requires a tremendous amount of, I don't know what the word is, but you have to withstand a lot of pain in order to have all of these tattoos. So you have to have a tremendous amount of fortitude to be able to have a body covered with this kind of artwork. Yeah.
So I have a pretty high pain threshold. So really, most of it doesn't really bother me. Wow. My shin bone hurt when I got one on my shin. And my lower back, which took like 8 sessions and 33 hours to get my back done, by the third pass in my lower back, because it's pretty detailed. It was that kind of hurt. But it was my stomach. That was brutal. That was like 2 sessions, 5 hours each. And I was like in tears like the whole time. It was just, that one really hurt. But I've got, that's
the Beatles.
The Beatles, right?
That's beautiful. I've seen it.
Look, tattooing and healing are kind of one and the same. So, which is, as you know, one of the projects I'm involved with. But I think when I first started, I went with Adrienne. Adrienne went with me to get my first one. It's like right after we met. So it's almost like 35 years ago. So it's been a lot of years that I've been getting these. But, and back then there was no internet, so you couldn't check out artists or any of that kind of stuff. And so we wound up in this biker shop that also happened to be a tattoo shop. And I was like really scared of the guys that were tattooing me. The guy that was tattooing me. But anyway, I think part of it was some subconscious, because getting a tattoo, if you are doing it in relation to a trauma, as opposed to just getting something decorative, kids who just want to get something decorative or whatever. But for most people, there's a lot more depth to it. And so I think part of it was subconscious when I first started doing it. And then I kind of, over time, realized the impact it was having on me, because when you go through trauma, it destroys the permanency in your life, right? It's like, what's going to happen next? You don't know what you can count on anymore, right, in your life. And tattoos are permanent.
Yeah.
So there's a certain permanency that you get when you get tattooed. And then if you are doing something that's a reflection of something that you went through, that's then part of the healing process, because you start thinking about what you want to get, what it is you're thinking about. And maybe you haven't put that much thought into it before, but it's part of the process. And when you start working with an artist on a design, then you have to start talking about it, because tattoo artists, I'll generalize, but it's kind of like, the thing you hear about a really good bartender is someone that you can sort of spill your life story onto, and you go to that bar and have those discussions with that bartender. Tattoo artists are really good at talking and listening. And it's really easy with most of the tattoo artists that have tattooed me. It's really easy to open up. And so when you're designing something with them, they're also interested in understanding, what's that design about?
Like, why is it
where
meaningful?
Are you coming from, and all that. And then you start having that whole conversation, and it could be very therapeutic. Mm-hmm. So for me, I have like 3 themes. I have some decorative stuff, but not all that much, but 3 themes. So everything is either family, music, or Israel, Judaism related. And so those are the things that were sort of the core of my life in terms of what was important. And so getting the tattoos kind of helps cement that, if you will, and is kind of a permanent marker that you're not who you were growing up, or that you've moved past the other stuff in your life.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Do you think anybody can turn their life around?
That anybody can turn their life around?
Yeah.
No.
Not everybody can, but you did it.
No, but the reason I say that is there are people that are in circumstances that it's just really, really hard to get out of. I'm a Jew. I've never self-identified as white. Jews aren't white. But I look white. My last name's Matros. People think it's Greek because of the OS. Mm-hmm. I worked for some really anti-Semitic people coming up, but they didn't know I was Jewish. So even though I like to think that I've earned what I've gotten, I know that some of those privileges have accrued to me because of how I look at my last name. And if you don't look a certain way, some of those opportunities just don't come your way. They just don't.
Even for an extremely talented
Right. So you hear about people breaking out. There are always examples of that, and folks that have grown up in really tough situations in inner cities or whatever, and you hear like amazing stories. So I think people demonstrate they can rise above their circumstances, but I think depending on your circumstances, sometimes it really is so difficult. And the bad stuff I did when I was a kid, I was able to kind of get out of, but some kids can't.
That's right. I mean, some people can't go to college. They get
caught up in that system because we have systemic issues in our country that are completely affect marginalized populations that don't affect other people, right? Or even if you sort of go outside of our country. So one of the countries we're in with IsraAid is Kenya. We're in a refugee camp called the Kakuma Refugee Camp, which is in northwest Kenya, and there's 280,000 refugees there. How do they break out of those circumstances, right? So, I think there are certain circumstances where you can't break out, or it's just so phenomenally difficult. So like in that situation, when we're in different countries with IsraAid, now with Israel, we're in 17 countries, but the staff that we put together in each of the countries are indigenous to the country. So for those people, maybe we're creating some opportunity because they're learning new skills, and they're getting paid, and they're professional, and they're learning things, and they're just, and it's their people, they're bringing great value. So we can maybe do that and help those people break out of certain circumstances. But that's a team of people that we're putting together that are on the ground. Hundreds of thousands of refugees.
Yeah, there's just so many people.
We're trying to provide water for them every day, okay? So it's like that basic kind of thing. So I think the human spirit allows you to rise above a lot of circumstances. And I would say even in situations like that, when you see the kids, because it's all they know, it's their second generation there now, they're kids. They love each other and they play together. And so you see that, you still see that spirit, but how are they really going to rise above those circumstances? So for the people who have been in circumstances far worse than mine, here in the States, and have risen above it, I have like the most admiration, because I didn't think it was easy, and they had it way worse than me, so, but I do think there are circumstances where it's just, you have so much stacked against you.
Yeah. But you've created so many opportunities for young people with the work that you're doing here in Orange County with Samueli, Tilly's Life Center, even Radiant. There are quite a few organizations that you and Adrienne are big donors to, really, that are helping people turn their lives around.
Well, I know we talked about the criteria earlier. The other criteria that I should have mentioned is we don't just like writing checks. So the organizations that for the most part, that we give to, we're directly involved in, whether it's being on the board or advisory or volunteering or some combination of all that. So we can see exactly how the organizations are functioning and how they're impacting people, and how the funds are being utilized. So everything's sort of happening the right way. So like I'm not going to write a check to the United Way or the American Heart Association when I have a lot of questions about things with those organizations, but I can't bring value, right? So, I think that kind of...
It has to be the right size organization so that you can actually see the benefit of your hard work.
Right, and kind of in concert with what we've been talking about, there are so many people that do have things stacked against them. So if you can work with populations where you can provide some opportunities that make it maybe a little bit easier for them to rise above their circumstances and know that they're valued and know that they're loved and supported, then, that's kind of what you want to do. And, like Adrienne will always say with mental health for adults is becoming much more accepted. Insurance companies are reimbursing, there's better policy decisions being made, but not when it comes to kids. It's like people in this country don't want to acknowledge that a 9-year-old can have mental health issues. And no matter how great the services may become for adults, if you don't start with the kids, it's just going to keep perpetuating itself, right? So, so the kids and the work we do, we think is really important.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that, to the things that we've been talking about, if you want them to sort of break out and overcome certain circumstances, that's who you have to work with.
Well, we are coming to the end of our time together, and we have so much more to talk about. So I'm wondering if I could get you back here another time.
Yeah, because we need to talk about Healing Inc.
We just have so much to talk about. Can you tell me more about Artists for Israel and your work with them and why?
Sure. So Artists for Israel initially had a project called Healing Kits, which is creating PTSD kits for kids for the communities in the Gaza border and some other communities. And they had another project where they do graffiti art. So it's sort of art against hate. And Craig Dershowitz, who's the CEO of Artists for Israel, who's a nice Jewish boy with like 80% of his body covered in tattoos, we got connected. He had this idea about tattooing and healing. And then a mutual friend said, oh, you have to meet Rick. And Craig's in LA, so he came down to Newport and he pitched this idea about using tattoos to heal. And it was originally going to start in Israel. This was in 2016. So I said, I'll do it with you. So it just resonated with me. And so we sort of put the project together. And it started out going to Israel every year, where we would bring tattoo artists, a lot of them really well-known tattoo artists from the States. And sometimes we had tattoo artists from Italy and from Sweden and from South Africa. And then we would connect with tattoo artists in Israel, Israeli Jewish tattoo artists, Israeli Arab tattoo artists. And so we'd bring the tattoo artists to Israel. Every once in a while, there'd be a Jewish tattoo artist from the States, but most of them weren't. And none of them knew anything about Israel other than what they would hear on the news. So not always great stuff. And the idea was the tattoo survivors of terror attacks and IDF vets that lost limbs or had scarring, PTSD issues. And so we would bring the tattoo artists for an extended period of time. We'd have certain days that we would just tattoo, and the rest of the time we would bring them all over the country. And they fell in love with Israel, and then they would start posting all over social media how great Israel is, it's not what you think, and all this sort of stuff. And some of them had 500,000 to 1.5 million followers. So it was a big deal, and every year we would bring different tattoo artists, so we would expand kind of that universe. So the tattoos are free for the recipients. So we sort of cover everything for the tattoo artists, and they love it. And then we since expanded in the States. So we've done Vegas twice. I mean, we have 2 mass shootings every day in our country, so we're a small, edgy organization. But we did Highland Park outside of Chicago, Memorial Day weekend. It was coming up on the first anniversary of the 4th of July massacre. We went to Waukesha, Wisconsin a few months ago. They had the December 2021 Christmas massacre. We've done Virginia Beach, Pulse Disco in Orlando, the LGBTQ disco, Pittsburgh Tree of Life. We did tattoo survivors from that shooting, and we've done a 9/11 event. So we've expanded it some to the States as well. And so a really cool thing, we were supposed to be in Israel October 17th. We go every October for Healing Inc. And it got canceled because of October 7th. All the artists wanted to go. These aren't Jewish people. They weren't concerned about safety net. They wanted to go and take care of people.
Wow.
So we may do 2 events this year. And the first event is going to be tattooers that we've brought before. The second event will be all new tattooers. But we actually just this morning reached out to about 20 tattooers and said, We know it's still a little crazy there. Would you be willing, if we wanted to do a second Healing Inc. event and do it sooner than later in Israel, how would you feel about going? Every one of them said, we're in. We are in.
Well, I think that says a lot about you.
So, but it also says something about them as people and their belief in the value they want to bring to people, right?
Yeah.
And also probably taking our word for it that we've been there. It's fine. You'll be fine there, kind of thing. So
Wow, that's I love that. I love this charity because it's something that allows people to use their creative ability to help other people, which is it's not a typical thing that can actually really help like this. But this is like a long lasting.
well, and since October 7th, it's like blown up in Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, Israelis get tattoos. It's a big deal in Israel getting tattoos. Lots of people do it. But since October 7th, it started out with a lot of people getting 7/10/23. And if you were to go online and just type in October 7th tattoos, you'll see amazing designs. And then when Mia Shem got released as a hostage, she's actually Israeli-French tattoo artist. She did 7/10/23, and then she came up with this phrase, "We shall dance again," which to me completely embodied the Israeli spirit. So that I got that, "We shall dance again," 7/10/23.
Beautiful.
And so it's been a big deal there from a healing perspective. It's really been interesting to watch.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. And look, Holocaust survivors for years now have been having their grandkids get their numbers tattooed, which I think have helped break down barriers. There was a documentary on it as well, and the 7/10/23 is in honor of that, the numbers from Auschwitz.
Right.
So it was specifically kind of to honor that.
Yeah, they're taking it back.
Right,
They're
taking it back.
reappropriating
Right, it's
their choice.
It's reclaiming your body. It's taking control back.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. I think it's all wonderful. I would love to talk to you more about IsraAid and Girls Inc. Such important other important endeavors that you have, and we need to get to that, but we can't do that today. So there will be a part 2 to Rick and Adrienne as well. She had a lot to talk about. We didn't get to all of it.
I'd love to come back and promote that stuff.
Super.
They do great work.
That is great to hear because I can't wait to hear about it. Honestly, I want to hear more about these things, and I'm going to wait. So this has been another episode of Pep Talks with Jeanne. I want to thank Rick for joining me today. Rick Matros. He's a great friend and one of the probably greatest philanthropists I know. And not just because of how much you give, but to what you give and to what you have accomplished in your lifetime. I find it remarkable. I have great admiration for you and Adrienne. You're two of my favorite people. And I love everything you do. And every time you invite me to one of your events for one of your charities, I will always come if I can with a checkbook. Because
we appreciate it. And we love you too.
Well, yeah, well, we go back a ways,
yeah.
I am so thrilled that you were able to join me today on my podcast, which is my passion project. I love to create positive content and inspire people to do great things like you are doing. So. And
you do, and I admire everything that you do as well, Jeanne. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. I do want to put one plug in for IsraAid.org, so please check that out. We are in 16 countries besides Israel. We've deployed in Israel for the first time since October 7th, but we do amazing work. That's much of it is climate change related, refugee situations, including in Ukraine, we work with all sorts of populations in all sorts of countries, and we demonstrate that religion and how you're brought up is irrelevant when you're working with people to help people.
Beautiful. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, it's important. It's important for you to get your story out, actually. And I don't know of a lot of ways for you to do it unless you write a book or you do these kinds of things where you put yourself out there. You have so much to give. Your story is very inspiring, Rick. I mean, it's extremely inspiring. I think a lot of young people would benefit a lot from hearing about it. It's really something. I'm
Thanks.
so impressed.
Thank you.
I want to make a special thank you also to my volunteers today who have helped with my philanthropic endeavors, and that is a big thank you to my camera operator, audio technician, producer, Eli Moskowitz, I don't know if you can see him, and his team, Bailey Kaufman, I don't know where she is, Robert Beilitz, I don't know where you are, Helen Harlan too, and a special shout out to my son Jay Bernstein, who created the music for this wonderful podcast. And thank you all again for joining me. I'm Jeanne Pepper. This is Pep Talks, and we have just finished our episode with Rick.